So, dear colleague, welcome on my penultimate stream. Originally, the interpretation of the first canto of Purgatory was scheduled for today's seminar. That is, we should have dealt with the Dante's brief sojourn on the shore of the island of Purgatory and his encounter with the guardian of the mountain, Cato the Younger. However, I changed my mind, and our time is narrowing up, and I also need you to focus on the first part of Divine Comedy, on Inferno, which is obligatory for final examination. Therefore, I have prepared only a short overview of the overall structure of Dante's Purgatory, as well as Paradise. However, we will not discuss much details of them. It is up to you whether you will continue in your reading of Dante's comedy or not. Next week, we will finish our seminar with the interpretation of the same end of Dante's book, with Dante's ecstatic vision of the Holy Trinity. By the way, before I proceed to the summary of last seminar in the form of question and answers, I remind you the final test will be realized online in the Moodle. You can the first date will be Tuesday, May the 19th at 9:30. The others date you can see on this slide. Please try to register into the Moodle. You can find it on this address. I'm sorry. On this address, on this URL, the login and the password is the same as I'm sorry. Oh no. Once more. Yeah, the password and login could be the same as to SIS. Yeah, that is correct. You can find the seminar Cornerstones of Western Culture and register in. And at May the 19th at 9:30, you will find here the final examination, the final test. Yeah. To pass the final test, you need to carefully read Homer's Odyssey, Virgil's 4 O'Clock, and Dante's Inferno. I also strongly recommend you read through my PowerPoint slides. They can be found in the shared folder, and try to answer the question in them. You can expect some of these questions in the final test. However, don't be afraid. The final exam will be bearing in mind the current situation and the situation of this term, not as difficult as it may seem. So it is all, and now let's turn our attention to the topic of last seminar. So okay, here we go. I have prepared a couple of questions as the summary of our last topic. The first one, briefly characterize the ninth circle of Dante's Inferno, its division, its nature, and character of the sins which are punished there. Okay, it is this picture, and last circle of Inferno is here and here. It is circle of traitors. It is the frozen hell, not fiery hell, but frozen hell. And it is divided into 4 concentric parts, divided by the 4 bands of the frozen river Cocytus. The first part is so-called Kaina, where the traitors to parents and relatives are punished. The second one is Antenora, which is the section of traitors of homeland. The third is Ptolemea, where the traitors of guests and friends are, and the last is Judeca, where the traitors of benefactors of emperor and god are punished. You can see here 4-fold division of the ninth circle of Dante's hell. So the second one, here we go. The second one. What is the main difference between Dante's presentation of Lucifer in the last canto of Dante's Inferno and the conception encountered mainly in romantic literature? In romantic literature, or also in work by John Milton as The Lost Paradise, Satan is often portrayed as a magnanimous and crafty rebel of revolutionary, exiled from heaven, who actively plans to return then with even more determination to fight. Dante's Lucifer, on the other hand, stuck in the center of the whole universe, bearing its full weight. Satan must be, in Dante's system, as far from God as possible. Therefore, the center of earth is Lucifer's proper place. Dante's Lucifer is not a revolutionary or rebellious spirit, as it were, but he is motionless and completely paralyzed. He doesn't speak. He is just sticking in the lowest circle of hell. So, the third question: explain the circumstances and mechanism of Lucifer's fall according to some hints in the last canto of Dante's Inferno. Lucifer was originally the most brilliant of the angels. His greatness indicating now only his enormous mass and also his 6 wings. After his rebellion against God, Satan was cast out of heaven. Lucifer hit the southern hemisphere. The ground, as it were, escaped to the northern hemisphere, and his fall pushed the mountain of Purgatory, and Lucifer was stuck in the middle of earth for the reason we have already said. So, next question: why isn't Lucifer chained to rocks or frozen in ice in the last canto of Inferno? What keeps him in the deepest place of hell? Lucifer had to be precisely at the center of the earth, just because the earth itself is the center of the universe, and therefore its center, Earth's center, is the point with the greatest distance from Imperium as the dwelling place of God. If the Lucifer during his fall exceeded this point and had fallen over, as it were, he would have become to return to God again. Therefore, he is in a place that is, as we have already said, as far away from God as possible. And in this place, Lucifer is trapped by the law of gravity, so needing nor shackles or chains and so on. So the next one, Lucifer. What is the role of Lucifer's wings for the overall structure of Dante's hell? Why has Dante's Lucifer exactly 6 wings? Lucifer is motionless. His rule over hell is realized through the airflow caused by flapping of his bat wings. This cold wind penetrated all circles of hell. You maybe remember the flying banner in the Limbus, in the 3rd canto of Inferno. Satan's 6 wings is a reminder of his angelic origin. 6 wings correspond to the common description of the highest angelic order of so-called seraphim, as they are described in the book of Isaiah, chapter 6. So, the next question. Explain why has Dante's Lucifer 3 heads, and who are the sinners punished in his 3 mouths? Satan is portrayed as a parody of Christ. His present form refers to Christ's crucifixion. Satan has 3 heads in which he crushes 3 sinners. The motive of the three-headed Lucifer is quite obscure. As far as I know, there is no parallel to it. There are 3 sinners in Lucifer's 3 mouths: Judas Iscariot as a traitor of Christ, and Brutus and Cassius as traitor of Caesar, the first emperor of Rome, founder of first imperial dynasty of Rome. So, the next one. Why can it be said that Dante's Inferno ends happily? In the verse 139, Dante and Virgil emerge from hell, and they can see the stars again in the morning sky just before dawn. The last thought of both Purgatory and Paradise is stelle. Italian stelle, it means stars in English. And the stars are, according to Aristotle and Plato, divine living beings. According to Dante, stars attract human eyes and lead man to the God. So, the way through Inferno and also through Paradise and Purgatory is essentially the way toward the God. It is the successful one. Yeah? And for that reason, we can say the Divine Comedy ends happily, and also all of its part ends happily. So, and next one is quite similar. Next question is quite similar. Why is Divine Comedy, in the classical sense, true comedy, including its description of the hellish horror, as can be found in Inferno? Yeah, it is conception of Aristotle, And the first part of Divine Comedy ends happily and joyfully, as the whole comedy does. And that is a reason why it is indeed a comedy. According to Aristotle, a comedy is a dramatic story with a happy ending, as stated by Aristotle in his Poetics. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the topic of today's seminar. So the first part should be the short overview or short description of Dante's Purgatory. The birth of Purgatory meant a mental revolution. Until the end of the 12th century, the word purgatorium, the same word, purgatorium, was absent in the dictionary at all. It appeared between between the years 1150 and 1200 as the expression of the rearrangement of the other world. It was kind of middle region was inserted between heaven and hell. The purgatory became the place where the deceased has to undergo the complex purification, and at the same time the livings could shorten its hardness with their prayers. Saint Thomas Aquinas situated purgatory underground. He meant it is above limbo and hell, just under surface of earth. On the other hand, Dante's Purgatory can be found on the surface and therefore under stars and sun. It is situated on the island in the southern hemisphere, as we have already said. Its first part is so-called pre-purgatory, which is apparently Dante's own invention, ante-purgatory or pre-purgatory. There are those who were either excommunicated by church or those who repented late. Pilgrims enter purgatory itself only in the ninth canto. Quite similar as in the ninth canto of Inferno, the pilgrims enter the gate of the city of Dis. That is the gate of the inner hell. There is kind of correspondence between purgatory and an inferno. In ninth cantos of both parts of Divine Comedy, the pilgrims are entering to the gates of the purgatory or hell proper. You can see the gate of purgatory, the closed gate of purgatory here. The purgatory itself is made up of 7 stepped, as it were, levers, or more precisely ledges. Here, 7 ledges of purgatory, whose perimeter gradually shrink toward the top. Each level corresponds to the appropriate deadly sin, so that the souls of sinners could purified from them or from it. Scholastic tradition recognized 7 deadly sins, and Dante arranged them according to their gravity or importance. The worst sin is the pride, which is cleansed on the first level or on first ledge of purgatory. The subsequent order is envy, anger, laziness or sloth, avarice, gluttony, lust or lechery. At the top of the mountain is the entrance to the earthly paradise. Properly speaking, the entrance to the earthly paradise is the wall of fire, and the wall of fire is situated at the end of the seventh edge, on seventh level, and the earthly paradise is situated at the same top of Mount Purgatory. You can see the earthly paradise here. There is a difference between earthly paradise, Dante's earthly paradise, and then the cosmic paradise, and as we will see at the second part of my lecture. Okay, the fundamental principle of purgatory structure is love. The place of sinner's soul on the appropriate ledge depends on his abundant or lacking love. The common essence of all sins is the lack of love for God or love for the good. The essence of sin is the love that evolved into evil, as indifferent love, perverted love, or love which turned into hate. On Purgatory Mountain, true love is restored. Climbing Purgatory means the souls are going back to good and to the God. Dante does not even mention lighter or so-called venial sins. Only deadly sins are queened in the Dante's Purgatory. They are the same sins which are punished in hell. Purgatory is, in its very essence, a kind of temporary hell, where sinners suffer in similar punishment, except their punishment is temporarily, mildly, and also it is the punishment for sins which are a little bit less grave, because either they been partially erased by repentance, or they are not rooted very deep, or finally they have only partially defiled the soul of the person concerned. The system of 7 major sins and the overall structure of purgatory is explained in the 17th canto of Purgatory. The first 3 types of perverted love or love for evil are 3 kinds of hatred for one's neighbors. These sins are purified at the lowest and widest ledges of purgatory, so here, and they are therefore the more sinister from all deadly sins. The first one is pride, and pride means an attempt to humiliate one's neighbor. The second one is envy. Envy means the inability to deal with success of one's neighbor. And the third is anger. That is the desire to avenge every possible insult. The other 3 types are other types of perverted love. However, in the contrast with the former group, the self-love, the perverted self-love is meant. The fifth sin is avarice. Avarice is perverted love for poverty. Sorry, not poverty, but property. Perverted love for property, for money, money and gold, and so on. The sixth one is greed, or also called gluttony. Greed or gluttony is perverted love for eating, drinking, etc. The seventh and final sin is the lust. that is the perverted love for pleasure above all sexual pleasure. In the Dante system, the last is the lightest of all that we sin, and the last is cleansed on the on the final ledge of purgatory, and that ledge, the punishments there are a little bit milder and not so cruel. The center of the whole system of purgatory and whole system of deadly sin as viewed by Dante is sin caused by laziness or indifference in love. Such love is lukewarm, or literally slow love, in Italian lento amore. The sin is called sloth, and it is cleaned in the exact middle of the mountain, on the fourth ledge, where indifferent, or more precisely speaking, sad sinners are cleaning their sin. Here. It is not easy to comprehend such a last type of sin. The sloth was originally associated with the monastic way of life, and it is called in Latin acedia. Originating from the Greek acedia and in verb kedeo. The Greek verb kedeo means I care. So acedia means negligence, negligence of care. Laziness, in the sense of acedia, is not a sinful inaction, however, a neglect of desirable activity, even though zealous but inappropriate action is taken. It is inability to enjoy life, enjoy one's life, or even dislike of life. For example, even lying on the couch can be done appropriately, and probably the lying on the couch can be done for the glory of God. It is possible. However, acedia means they are not, or we are not able to enjoy even the lie on the couch. It is boring for us. Actually, everything is boring. From the point of view of modern psychology, that sin, the sin of acedia, could be probably identified as deep depression, called deep depression. That is the essence of the sin of acedia from the point of view modern psychology. So the 7 deadly sins are ranked hierarchically, so that soul may progress on its way from one ledge to another. Purification is limited in time, however long this time may be. Therefore, in purgatory, time must necessarily pass, in contrast to hell, which is essentially timeless region. There are principally 3 methods of cleansing in Dante's Purgatory. The first one, that is cleansing by corporal punishment, that kills evil passions and encourages virtue. The second one is Twinsen by meditation, queening by meditation on sin, which is to be purified. Dante's Purgatory can be read also as a treatise on virtue and vices. The third one is queening by prayer. In Purgatory, sinners can pray in opposite to hell. The prayer in hell would make no difference because there is no hope in hell. We can even distinguish the depiction of the hell from depiction of Purgatory in visual art exactly by the presence of praying sinners. The praying sinners means that is depiction of Purgatory. And we can add the fourth way or fourth method of cleaning of sin in sin of soul in Dante's Purgatory. And that is the cleaning by intercession. Majority of sinners which Dante encounters in the wages of Purgatory beg their living relatives or friends for help through intercession or prayer. So, not only my own prayer is the method of cleansing the sin in Purgatory, but also prayer of my friends or relatives of neighbors. Prayer for me. That is also very useful tool for cleaning of mine own sin. That is so-called intercession. According to medieval point of view, the Church is able to mitigate the suffering of the sinners in Purgatory and accelerate their ascent by the means of prayers. Moreover, there is also special Pope privileges to declare so-called Holy Year. As Dante's arch enemy, the Pope Boniface VIII died in the year 1300 for the first time in the Church history, and such way, by declaring of Holy Year, Boniface VIII effectively emptied all purgatory. Why? Because such way he granted the full indulgence of sin to all sinners punished in purgatory. At the end of this very short overview of Dante's Purgatory, let me introduce the very concise characteristic of it, according to famous French scholar Jacques Le Goff. Jacques Le Goff. Dante's idea of this intermediate zone is dynamic and imbued with spirituality. Purgatory is not a neutral intermediary, but an intermediary with an orientation. What is more, despite occasional encounters with darkness, smoke, and the night, but that is always night under the stars, the travelers find that the mountain of Purgatory gradually becomes enveloped in light as they climb. Their ascent is a climb toward the light. Between the darkness of hell and the illumination of heaven, Purgatory is a study of so-called chiaroscuro, in which the light steadily drives out of the dark. According to Jacques Le Goff, the Purgatory is study of chiaroscuro. It's very famous characteristic of Dante's Purgatory. So now you can turn from Purgatory to the next region of Dante's cosmos, and this one is paradise, paradiso. The structure and same character of Dante's Paradiso is based on the geometric model derived from so-called Aristotle Ptolemaic cosmology and from the angelological system of Dionysius the Areopagite. That was the Christian thinker from 6th century. Aristotle supposed the Earth was a stationary, fixed point in the center of the universe. The concentric spheres, 8 in total, are revolved around the Earth, around this center. These are 7 planetary spheres, 5 of which have so-called epicycles introduced to explain the so-called retrograde movement of planets, and the 8th sphere is the sphere of star. So let's see what means the retrograde motion of planets and what the geocentric model looks like. So the epicycles, very useful depiction of epicycles you can find on this address, yeah, and yeah, and here you can see the relative movement of the stars, of the planets as Mars and Earth, yeah, and he is the star Mars, and you can see in its relative motion is for this moment as it were backward, yeah, and now there is the Mars turns kind of turn and totally changes the direction of its movement, yeah? You can see it once more, yeah? Earth and Mars, yeah? And now you can see the complete change of directions, two change of directions of the movement of the Mars, yeah? Yeah? And here you can see the reason. The reason is that the apparent movement of Mars is only relative movement to the position Mars to the Earth, yeah? And it was this retrograde movement of planets was a great riddle for ancient and also for medieval astronomers and thinkers, yeah? And another good depiction of the retrograde movement of planets and also the whole vision of geocentric model as presented by Aristotle and Ptolemy, you can see on the second YouTube video, yeah? Let's see it, and here you can see the Earth in the center of universe. This brightest object is the sun, yeah? And the object closest to Earth and the fastest in movement is the moon. And between Earth and sun there are two planets, the Mars and the Venus. And beyond the orbit of sun we can find the Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, yeah? These are all the planets known in the Middle Ages and in antiquity. And you can see the Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn as so-called epicycles, yeah? Epicycles means as it were inserted cycle to its orbit, and by these epicycles, by the means of these epicycles, the ancient astronomer as Ptolemy explain the retrograde movement of planets, as we have seen on the first YouTube video. So that is the very nice model of the geocentric system of Aristotle and Ptolemy, and that kind of system is the foundation, is the base of Dante's depiction of Paradiso, of paradise. So let's continue. Beyond the eighth sphere, that is the eighth sphere is the sphere of the stars, and beyond